Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown. For those of you who are new to this installment, what we do is each week look at the top performing decks on MTG Arena for each format. And we get this information from Untapped.gg. It's a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win and loss rates, like deck performance, a whole bunch of things in terms of like changes to your deck. Recommends you decks you could build based on syncing your collection with this. Lets you know how many wild cards you're short, for example. And it's free to get started on it. The link is in the video description down below if you want to get that going. And all this kind of win rate data gets aggregated and gives us a weekly kind of snapshot of what are the best decks. Normally, I do standard all-in-one batch, both best of one and best of three. There's a lot of decks this week, so I've actually split them up. So if you're looking for the best of one content, separate video in the playlist. This one is going to be just on best of three. So jumping into it, as always, if you do enjoy this content, greatly appreciated after the video. If you can, drop a like and a comment, helps out the channel. And if you haven't done so, consider subscribing to the channel. In addition to these meta videos, we play a lot of these decks. As well as I play a lot of brews. Typically always get Mythic with like an off-meta deck, and I frequently finish top 1200 as well. So if you want kind of competitive, but maybe not the run-of-the-mill decks, definitely check out the channel. So going in week of March 26th to April 2nd, Saturday to Saturday, we are looking at total matches of 23,000 games. Notably, these are matches, not games. So a match could consist of upwards of 3 games. So 46 to 69,000, nice. And platinum to mythic rank is typically what we look at. And if we jump in, the top performing deck of the week is Orzhov Control, sporting about a 65% win rate. And this is kind of a mid-rangey, kind of planeswalker-y grind value. Notably, no blood on the snow. This is usually kind of like the deviations with the deck. But it's looking to use like an engine of Wedding Announcement and Welcoming Vampire to draw you cards. You have Ambitious Farmhand that can help you dig for lands. Also flips into a pretty reasonable lifelinker. You have Luminarch Aspirant, so kind of a more mid-rangey. Then some matchups, this can be an aggressive style deck, you know, curving Luminarch into like Wedding Announcement, into like Wandering Emperor, starts putting pressure on your opponent. You have Restoration as well to search for lands. Be interested to see. You have 7 ways to search up planes and then 5 planes, but I'm not the deck builder here. It seems to be doing well. You have some Hagra Mauling, Vanishing Verse removal, your Meathook Massacres as a sweeper, 4 of Wandering Emperor, 2 Lolth, 2 Kaya just for value, a Legion Angel package as well as a Emeria call for some angelic top end. And then you're just using utility lands. You have the Hives as your creature lands, Takenuma and Eiganjo as some more utility lands there. In your sideboard, you have like anti-mono white stuff, Duress versus Control, Go Blank versus Control, another sweeper and Path of Peril, as well as Farewell. So you got that Orzhov kind of mid-rangey control list. Up next, mono white aggro, 62%. And really what we see the deviation here compared to the best of one version, best of one was a little bit lower to the ground, where we're seeing this best of 3 version respect control a little bit more. And then you have like your full 4 of Thalias. It's also full 4 Wandering Emperors. And this is 19, 22, 24 land version. We were seeing I think 21 or 22 in the best of one version. Full 3 Adeline, notably no real removal. Like Valorous Stance is pseudo removal, in Wandering Emperor is pseudo removal, but we're not seeing any Brutal Cathars or Apparitions. Those are all on the side, so kind of very specific with its direction. We're going to target these kind of slower decks and have more interaction while being kind of a big mono white early. With the ability to pivot. So you have like your creature removal, you have your board wipe protection, as well as some more incidental removal as relevant. This version as well is playing 3 Crawling Barrens, as well as 3 Cave of the Frost Dragons. Up next, Death and Taxes, Tempo Time. This deck's actually really fun to play. 62% Azorius Tempo is probably more of an appropriate line. There's no Thalias, but really what you're trying to do here is you're combining effective mono white creatures You have your Luminarchs, your Intrepid Adversaries, Adeline, Sky, Elite Spellbinder, you got the Wandering Emperors, but you're mixing it in with tempo elements. So you have Spectral Adversary kind of phase out your creatures or your opponent's creatures to get through like blockers. Swirling Mist is a very similar idea. You have Spell Pierce for disruption, Fading Hope to get rid of creatures, Maul for evasion, and then you also have a Kyodai, just a way to kind of flash, give you a creature indestructible, can kind of be combat tricky. So what I like about this deck is like you're playing an aggressive style strategy at times. You can kind of pivot into control if you want a little, or you just kind of use these effective creatures as combat tricks. Not necessarily like, you know, your giant growth plus 3/3, that's incidental, but like, you know, surprise Wandering Emperor, now my creature has first strike. Or, you know, now my creature's indestructible type thing. Or I phase out one of your creatures, kind of way like that. In the sideboard, you get access to counter spells, Malvin Hermit, negate Test of Talents, you get some more removal, another Spellbinder for kind of the control matchups, a Portable Hole, and some stances. Up we got Selesnya Ramp, kind of a green-white mid-range shell. So you got early ramp in Innkeeper and Florahedron. That'll take you to your 4-drops where you're on 4 of Chariots, 4 of Wandering Emperor, 2 Yasharn. Then you got a Legion Angel and Starheim for an angel kind of package. You also have Aspirant, so it's not like full-on ramp. It's kind of mid-rangey, scale your things up. Apparition as the removal choice in the main with a Wedding Announcement, and then you also have the ability with Wrenn, make tokens, copy them with Eska's Chariot, as well as the Miria's Call. Sorry, I've done like 3 of these videos back to back. My voice is starting to go. We got Circle of Confinement as a removal spell, along with Valorous Stance. You have your Spellbinders and Reidane and Guardian of Faith for the control matchup, and then an extra copy of Yasharn when you need to be a little bit bigger, but also against like the Rakdos Sacrifice matchup, which we'll see next. It kind of hoses that matchup. Speaking of the Sacrifice itself, so this is a Rakdos kind of mid-rangey Sacrifice deck, and it's built around Ani Cult Anvil. We've seen many variations in Standard, Pioneer, Historic, Alchemy, probably Modern. I think this would be reasonable in Modern, maybe. I could be wrong. I don't play Modern anymore. But really, you're just trying to use artifact synergies. You can make blood tokens with Bloodtithe Harvester, Valdaran Epiture, Blood Fountain, Experimental Synthesizer for card advantage. You have removal and like Voltaic Surge, Meathook Massacre, Hagra Mauling, Infernal Grasp, card advantage, as well as in Dispute. A couple copies of Tainted Adversary. You also have Fable of the Mirror Breaker to create copies of your creatures, kind of get value that way, as well as make some treasure tokens with the Shamans. Your sideboard, you have like anti-control hate, more creature removal, your full Meathook package, some Bank Busters to grind. Trespasser is kind of the mid-rangey threat, good against heavy removal decks, but also if anything's using the graveyard. You got your Sorens, and then your Lolth when you want to grind. So you can kind of pivot up if they're bringing in a lot of like artifact hate. Even if like they have Yasharn, you can kind of just pivot to Rakdos midrange. Tima midrange, aka Gruul with counterspells. So we've seen variations of this deck in the past. It's kind of a Jaspara, Magda, ramp you up to as early as turn 3 Goldspan Dragon. You have the Chariots and Wrenn kind of mixed in there. New addition is the Fable of the Mirror Breakers to make copies of things like Goldspan Dragon, stuff like that. You have removal with Dragon's Fire main, 3 counterspells in the main with addition of some more on the sideboard. You're able to hit those counterspells off 8 pathways, as well as the various numbers of treasures the deck can build up to. And then you got like removal, Flame Blessed, and Burning Hands, and then Land Liberators for enchantments or artifacts, and then as well as Tangle Trap for any sort of flyers, Hinata, Goldspan, anything in the air, paired with artifacts as well. We have Azorius, Snozorius Control at 57% win rate. So this version here, like the best of one version, we saw had Devastating Mastery, so its configuration was slightly different. This one being on Farewell means it's going to have more permanence in the deck. We're seeing 2 Ilmarith, you have your Wandering Emperors, you have your Teferis in here, Hullbreaker Horror. You have Eiganjo, which can also just be a win condition on its own, along with Bankbuster. A lot more early interaction in this one. You have full play set of March, so 3 copies of Fateful Absence, just, you know, your strokes, negates disruptions, a couple copies of Deluge in there for card advantage, 6 sweepers between Doomscar and Farewell, and a couple copies of Emeria's Call. This version 2-2 split between Cave and Hall of the Storm Giants. And then your sideboard's really like anti-control, anti-counterspell, anti-counterspell, Lier for matchups where they're not really going to take this off the battlefield. Because it has the one of Legion Angel, you can have a Legion Angel package, another Hullbreaker for the kind of control mirrors, and then Sunset Reveille for the aggressively slanted decks. Lastly, this one's a cool one. It's Golgari, mid-range, Harness Infinity, Invoke Despair, Shigeki kind of deck, 56% win rate. So you got like a dig up package for early like fixing and then late game tutoring. And what you're trying to do with this deck is like leverage Shigeki to kind of channel through and return cards to your hand. You have a way with like Harness Infinity to do something similar. You have a sweeper in Calling Ritual that can also ramp you into other things. Like I could see a potential board state where you Calling Ritual into Invoke Despair. You got bindings, you got inscriptions. Interesting choice. They're going for 3 main board Ray of Enfeeblements. Really kind of main boarding for mono weight. We see Old Rusty Boy here. Lets you mill for kind of value, whether it be treasures or insects or blood tokens. You have some Rolfs as well, kind of just playing in there. And then it's just a mix of cards. You got anti-aggro stuff like more Callings, like Goldspan Tech, another Serolf, kind of a mix of cards in the mid-rangey decks. You have Briarbridge, you have Uncounterable Craigplate here for against like control matchups, kind of mixed in there, another Shadow's Verdict. So kind of a rock style grind them out deck. Main thing here is like you don't get something like Vanishing Verse. You're playing Witherbloom Command, which can be more versatile at times, but I've always been like crazily disappointed. This card usually always sits in my hand and rots. Like Vanishing Verse is just so much better in my opinion. But interesting deck nonetheless. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the week for Best of 3 Standard. Let me know in the comments what you're playing, what you're doing well with, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one and stay safe out there.